Hey everyone, thank you for joining us. We're just getting started here. We're going to give it a minute or two for folks to join. We'll just give it one more minute before we get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. I'm Amy Pacheco from the 4A's Media Tech and Data team. And today we're really glad to be welcoming Pixability for our session Adjusting to Big Shifts in YouTube Advertising in 2024. Pixability is the leading AI-driven tech company that empowers some of the world's largest brands and their agencies to maximize the value of their video advertising across YouTube and CTV platforms. Leveraging its proprietary technology, platform, and data, Pixability makes every video impression matter by identifying contextually relevant, brand-suitable inventory, maximizing cost-efficient outcomes. Joining us today, we have Matt Duffy, the CMO of Pixability. Matt comes with over 20 years of marketing leadership experience in the industry and oversees all marketing strategy and execution at Pixability. And also with us, we have Erin Mullaney, the media director at Connelly Partners. Erin has close to a decade of experience in marketing and media with a focus on ad agency roles. And she champions advertising's potential for driving incremental behavior change and has a track record of redesigning media strategies to achieve bottom line growth for her clients. Also with us today, just a little bit of housekeeping. We have Ashley with us from the Pixability team. She and all of us will be monitoring the Q&A. So as Matt and Erin are presenting, if you have questions or comments or anything you'd like to surface, please do enter that into the Q&A and we'll be able to respond to that during the session. If we don't get a chance to, we'll follow up with you directly afterwards. This session is being recorded and will be shared out later on. So you'll have access to that and you can feel free to share that with any internal colleagues at your agencies. So with that, I will again welcome Matt, Erin, and Ashley and kick it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Amy. Welcome, everyone. I heard we've got a good number of people. We can't see you from our side. We just see ourselves, but we heard we have a real good number of people on the line. Super excited to be talking about all the crazy stuff happening with YouTube advertising right now. The timing is pretty exciting. I just came from last night. There was a big dinner in New York with a lot of Google and YouTube execs that I went to, talking all about some big changes at YouTube. So the timing of this is perfect. So again, Amy did a great job on the introductions. Very excited to have Erin here with us today. And as Amy said, Ashley, our VP from our team, is on the line as well, who can answer pretty much anything if need be on YouTube. So I thought it'd be a good place to start with this sort of insane statement that was made by the Washington Post last month, that YouTube is the most consequential technology in America, which I thought was a very bold and exciting way to characterize YouTube. And if you read the article, you should check it out. It was early April, it was April 9th. If you read the article, it talks about how YouTube has been and is still the #1 video platform for consumers, period. It's the across the world. And most people know that. What a lot of people don't know, and Erin's going to be talking a lot about this because she talks with her clients about this at Connelly, but it's the #1 CTV platform in terms of reach, bigger than Netflix, bigger than Hulu. And that's something that not everyone thinks about, and not everyone thinks of it as a TV advertising medium. So that's an exciting shift that's happened. It's also the #2 search engine in the world to Google. And so some people should be thinking more of it in terms of organic search. And Ashley and I talked to a lot of folks about that. And there were a lot of other things in this article about how YouTube is just a very unique animal, right? It's not really just a social platform, and it's not really just a TV platform. It's both, and it's everything. And so what we're going to talk about today is there are a lot of crazy changes that have happened in the recent past and are going to be happening this year that when we talk to agencies and brands, they should be thinking about it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And again, Amy gave a really good introduction to us at Pixability, but just a quick reminder of who we are. We're basically a third-party software company that we have more video level YouTube data than anyone outside of Google. And so we use that to help brands and agencies maximize their impressions on YouTube so that they're suitable, so that they're high performing, et cetera. And so super excited to share what we see happening right now, because we have sort of a front row seat to everything that's happening with YouTube right now. And I'll kick it over to Erin to talk a little bit about Connelly.
Yes, thanks, Matt. So super happy to be on here with Pixability. They really stand for what we're looking for at CP, which is quality advertising. So Connelly Partners, for those who don't know us, we're an independent agency located in Boston's South End. We also have offices in Dublin and Vancouver. Happy to share that we had a couple Ad Age awards this past year, one being Best Agency Culture, which was great, and I can attest to it because I just came back from the CP Abroad program, working in our Dublin office for a month, and then Best TikTok Campaign. So really an integrated agency, and my role as media director is making sure that I'm finding solutions for our clients that are driving real business results, and keeping across the landscape and how that's changing. And YouTube is absolutely one of the biggest changes that we're noticing right now. So per Matt, I wanted to start with a little bit of a table set in terms of YouTube. So we know, if we can actually go back one more sec.
Stay back. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Just before everybody gets distracted by all the numbers.
Yeah.
We know that YouTube is a platform that transcends tactics. It's been looked at as social media. It's been absolutely looked at as online video, as it should be. But connected TV is an area where we need to make sure we're considering YouTube, because as Matt had said, it's #1. And it's not just #1 in terms of viewership. It's #1 in more ways than that. So looking at this Nielsen chart, which I'm sure we've all seen by now, the Gauge report. This report looks at broadcast and cable versus streaming and how that shakes out in terms of viewership each month, because we know it's ever changing. I feel like I can relate to a lot of people in this call, though, in the sense that a lot of the headlines coming out around CTV were not necessarily isolating ad-supported viewership or media consumption. And as an advertiser, that is obviously imperative to coming up with your media strategy and how you can actually get your message in front of consumers and influence them. So here we see the streaming category, super fragmented. We all know the top 5 publishers in streaming make up 65% of streaming. So that's the lion's share right there. And YouTube is #1 at 9.7%. So YouTube is obviously very important in the streaming category, and I don't think people realize how much YouTube, the regular old YouTube app, we're not talking YouTube TV, is being viewed on the big screen in the living room. So when you also account for, okay, that's actually a good question. We can go back. Somebody just asked, are we talking about YouTube TV? This is just the regular old YouTube app. I'm calling it YouTube main for the purposes of, all this data. So basically, it's number one, just a regular old YouTube app. And then when you account for time spent with ad-supported content compared to those top 5 publishers, it's just even more exponential. So on the next slide, you can see I had to fix the numbers a little bit here because there's not apples to apples across everything. So the chart on the left is looking at YouTube CTV reach only, just on the CTV. The other publishers are looking at all OTT ad-supported only inventory. So even when you're comparing CTV, which is just one device, and all the other publishers' OTT inventory, YouTube has the lion's share at 53.3% internet users reached. The next closest you guys can see is Prime Video. Prime Video just went ad supported in Q1 of this year. And that's a shift, that they were not ad supported and now they are. But the thing with Prime Video is it's part of your Amazon subscription. So there's less of a Amazon Prime subscription, I should say. So there's less of an intentional subscription with it. And that actually comes up when you start to think about time spent. So obviously there's reach. Obviously there's time spent. You want both of those to be high to get a better chance at delivering to your target audience. And of course you need ad-supported content to do that. So once we start comparing YouTube to the second most streamed CTV app, they're only reaching 4.4% of internet users across all the different OTT devices. So I just think that YouTube TV, just YouTube main app is really number one in CTV, but doesn't often get looked at as number one in CTV. And this doesn't even go into all the fragmented ways that we have to buy all these different channels, but we want to take this time to do a little bit more of a deep dive on YouTube specifically. And given the high reach, how can we make sure that those dollars are working for you the best they can and are really reaching quality inventory for a quality audience?
That's awesome, Erin. And I know a lot of the folks on the line are representing independent agencies like Connelly, some folks from sort of bigger holdco agencies. And I think we get these same questions that some of Erin's team comes to us. And we're going to cover these 5 areas and we're going to cover them sort of quickly. We could do a whole webinar about any of these things. And we could do a whole webinar about YouTube as a CTV platform as well. So we could dive deep, but we really just wanted to give you guys a quick sense of 5 areas that are really shifting a lot on YouTube that everyone should kind of have just a sense of how they should approach it. And you see them here: brand safety and suitability, performance tools that Google is rolling out. They announced some more last night at this Brandcast event I was at. YouTube Shorts, a lot going on there. Cookie deprecation, everyone's hearing about that. What does that mean for YouTube? And finally, the big emphasis on responsible media, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So we'll start with brand safety and suitability. And what I like to do first is make sure everyone sort of knows the difference between the two things, because sometimes they're used interchangeably. Now, brand safety basically means content on any platform, but in this case, we're talking about YouTube, that no advertiser would want to be on. It's just flat out unsafe. The Global Alliance for Responsible Media, GARM, defines this as, they call it floor content. It's basically just unsafe for anyone. No one would want to be on it. YouTube has done a really good job of getting rid of the really bad, unsafe content. And GARM puts out this report every year that shows that really less than 1% of the content that you're going to advertise on YouTube is going to be unsafe. For some advertisers, they say, well, I don't even want 1%. And so, that's where partners can come in like us to help you with that. But the real focus that a lot of brands look at on YouTube is safety is what, something that no one would want to be on, but suitability is about what would my brand want to be on based on what we value. And that's very specific, brand specific. And what we did is we did a survey of agencies, independent and holdco agencies of saying what percentage of impressions on YouTube do you think would be unsuitable on the average campaign? And the answer was 30%. So, as an agency person, you're sitting there, you're like, if I run a YouTube campaign and I don't use any safety or suitability tools, I can expect that about 99.9% of my impressions will be safe, but maybe about 70% will be suitable for the advertiser I'm working for. So that's something that you have to think about. Now you have to weigh it in relation to what you're doing for the performance of the campaign. And we're going to talk about that. And so, I'm going to ask Erin her opinion on this too, but like as an agency or as a brand doing it yourself, you have to think about, how valuable are the impressions that you're spending money on? And if some percentage of your impressions are not suitable, that may be fine with some brands, it may be not fine for other brands. We've also found that there's a whole other 15% or more that brands are wasting on not driving performance in the right way. There are all kinds of different ad formats on YouTube now. There are all kinds of different combinations of tactics that you need. And if you're not doing that combination of things right, you're basically wasting impressions in that way as well. So I know, Erin, you and I talked about this a little bit, but your advertisers, none of your advertisers are saying, just keep me safe, I don't care about performance. And none of them are also saying, just do performance, I don't care if I'm running on total garbage, right? So just, I guess, talk just a little bit about how you're always trying to balance that on all the platforms. You're trying to balance that.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm such a believer in quality media, because I think better quality media will lead to better results. However, that's not always the case, funny enough, in terms of if you're just going after attribution performance, sometimes it optimizes a different way. So I think having that balance of quality, but also keeping an eye on performance is the human touch that you need in all these algorithms. And I think having these extra tools are very important in doing that, because if you just did it without them, you're kind of letting the platform monetize itself and taking all the ad inventory. But by putting guardrails up, you're able to, save money and be a little bit more brand safe. And that's what I think is great about Pixability is, the investment is also coming from the savings when you're not spending all this money on unsafe or unsuitable content.
Exactly. And let me give you all a sense of, these are just examples of the types of ways content may or may not be suitable for your brand, depending on your brand. Some of these your brand might be fine with, and some of them your brand may not be. So the top left is the GARM Dirty Dozen. They're basically 12 types of content, sexual content, explicit violence, explicit language. There's 12 of these sort of dirty dozen categories. That's one way that the content might be unsuitable. Another way is it may be in a language that you weren't trying to target to. Another way is it may be made for kids, and maybe you're a brand that doesn't want to target content that's made for kids. It might be content that's negative about your brand. It might be a controversial influencer. It might be around tragic news, like a really horrible thing just happened, and you have this happy ad that's appearing right next to this really tragic event, right? It might be misaligned, where in this case, it's vegan content that maybe a McDonald's wouldn't want to run on, right? And this last thing here, I wanted to bring up long tail, because it's when we talk about the title of this webinar, it's one of the shifts that we saw just before this year, where what Google did, a lot of what Google's doing now, which I think is the right thing, is they're putting more emphasis on helping the creators make money. And one of the things they did is they lowered the bar in terms of how big your channel had to be ad eligible, to be eligible for ads. And it lowered from 1,000 subscribers minimum to 500 plus minimum. Now there are tons of amazing channels that have 500 to 999 subscribers. So this is not to say that every channel that's good has more than 1,000 subscribers, but you just have to be aware of this sort of long tail effect, that there's going to be more long tail channels, like this funny example I found of Aussie pups, that will be mixed into your campaign. And for some brands and agencies we work with, they say, listen, if we're driving the right results, we're fine with being on Aussie pups. It's not unsuitable for us. But then there are others that say we really want to stay on sort of more premium content. We can drive that balance for them. So this is one of the shifts that we're seeing. Another shift that we should all expect this year is with the political season, we're going to see more misinformation on all of the platforms. not just YouTube. Obviously, Meta has had its challenges, TikTok. And so we saw this. We have a huge insights team at YouTube, and we saw this back in 2020, where that year we saw a huge rise in misinformation on YouTube, right? And so that's another shift that everyone should be thinking about that's related to brand suitability. And so this is just a quick look. Again, we could dive very deep into brand safety and suitability, but we want to give you a quick look at some of the things to be aware of as you're planning campaigns for this year on YouTube. Which plays really well into the performance tools. So what YouTube has rolled out is a bunch of performance tools on YouTube, including video action campaigns, which is the one we're going to talk about today. And for those of you that don't know what video action campaigns are, it's a really, really great way to drive conversions. And in fact, it can drive, double the conversions or half the CPA of traditional ways on YouTube. So it's a great performance tool. What it also does, though, is it runs on GVP inventory, which is Google Video Partners, which is outside of YouTube. Now, a lot of the brands we work with are totally fine with that. They say, run this campaign wherever you can run it to get the performance that I want, the conversions that I want, et cetera. Others say, whoa, I'm running a YouTube campaign. I want it on YouTube. I don't want it on mobile apps. I don't want it on some of these sites that I don't know anything about. And so this is just something that we tell everyone to think about what's right for you, for your campaign. And GVP has had some other kind of things you've seen in the headlines maybe this year where there were some brands and agencies complaining about GVP, feeling like they didn't realize how much of their campaigns were running on GVP content instead of YouTube content. And we wanted to point out to you, and these are the types of things that you wouldn't know unless you're really, YouTubing, putting YouTube campaigns together every single day, like our teams are. But there's a place you have to uncheck for certain campaigns that you don't want GVP. And some of the brands that didn't realize they were running on GVP, they just didn't know that you had to uncheck it. So Google tried to make that more clear, and they said, sort of mea culpa, we should have made it more clear that you have to uncheck it. But this is something we're seeing, and I know, Erin, you mentioned this is a little bit like PMax, right? Like Performance Max is another performance tool across Google that they've rolled out that's sort of similar to this, right?
Yeah, and I think for being on the agency side, you have so much more than this one platform and market. You have your whole integrated strategy, and you might already be doing programmatic buying, and it's you want to know where your inventory is going in many circumstances. So if that's already taken care of in another part of your plan, this is really important to, if this investment's going to YouTube and you only want it on YouTube, this is an important consideration and making sure that this is implemented. And it does seem reminiscent of PMax in the sense of it can be distributed in a lot of places, and you're always feeling like you want a little bit more information about where it's going. So absolutely a consideration, especially in an integrated plan.
Totally. And what we see sometimes is we see advertisers over-rotate towards trying to be super conservative and safe. We saw that with the McDonald's group that we worked with that came into us, and they were running their campaigns on this very small list of YouTube channels to just stay totally safe. But they were finding it was really hard to find their audience in that small list of YouTube channels, and the cost was super high. And so we said, listen, you can still stay suitable and expand that list of channels that you're running on and help them drive a lower cost and higher reach of the audience, right? And then we had this big financial company that came into us and said, we've opened the net so wide and we're kind of don't care where we run because we want to reach everyone in the world a million times. And we said, that's great. Do you realize you're running on this type of content? And they said, okay, we want high reach, but can you get rid of that content? And so it's all a balance, but we're seeing a lot of advertisers over rotate. And that's kind of what Erin and I talked about, is finding that right balance. So we've talked about 2 of the 5 things that we see shifting. Now, shorts is a big one. Now, this, I can tell you at this Google event I was at last night, the 2 big themes for YouTube and Google executives right now are TV and shorts. The fact that YouTube is growing in CTV, as Erin talked about, and now shorts is growing like crazy. So you're going to see a lot of stuff related to these 2 things. So what are shorts? I think most people know, but basically it's just any of this vertical content that's 60 seconds or less, right? And this first came out just sort of, years ago during the pandemic, where YouTube rolled it out and everyone said, all right, this seems like an answer to TikTok, right? It's grown considerably. I will be honest that I did not think their answer to TikTok would do well, because it seemed like it was an imitation product, right? But it has grown rapidly, and that's because YouTube leveraged what it has, which it already has the biggest audience in the world. So it as you guys have seen, it really integrates shorts really well into everything it does. You can't go on a YouTube page now without having a short pop up. And so shorts have grown dramatically. But this has really been organic content. We're seeing a lot of brands create organic content. So not advertising necessarily, but putting on their channels vertical short content, like the Emirates did here. We're seeing tons of brands do this. And so this has been really a really cool trend. What we haven't seen, and the big shift we're seeing, is now people doing shorts advertising. And so we're going to talk about that now. So it wasn't until this December, just before the year started, that you could actually target an ad to YouTube Shorts content and isolate it. Before that, earlier in 2023, you had to use ad targeting from YouTube, where it would show up on Shorts, but you couldn't make it just on Shorts. And now you can do that. And so we have lots of agencies and brands coming to us saying, we're so excited to do this, but we're really not sure what it means, what to do. And some agencies like Erin, and she can talk this, are already doing TikTok and Reels and all these things. So they sort of get it. But the long and the short of it is, what we're seeing so far is, first of all, we're seeing a lot of agencies trying this and jumping in to try this. What we're seeing in terms of performance that most of you won't be shocked at is shorts are really, really good at driving reach. What they're not good at is driving completed views, which some brands really want. They want to know that their ad was watched all the way. Because it's a feed like TikTok, people scroll through it, and you don't always get as many completed views as you get in the in-stream ad units, but you get tons of reach and low CPMs. So that's what's great about it. And you see a lot of the things that Google's rolling out will have shorts mixed in it to lower the CPM for you all. I know, Erin, you talked about this is something that a lot of you're having a lot of your clients do, YouTube Shorts alongside TikTok and others, right?
Yes, and it's honestly been a great option now that we can specifically target YouTube Shorts, because the content is different than you don't really want your vertical video showing up where horizontal is like this. I mean, it still can perform if the content's good, but this was nice. I think December was when this rolled out. Yep. To be able to isolate YouTube's shorts. And we did it in Q1 of this year. And it's just been a great extension. There's a lot of work that goes into creating influencer content, and content that's tailored to, the TikTok and the Reels. To be able to put it onto another platform and extend that reach is really great. And I think this is an example for me of like, you are not the target audience. Because when I heard about YouTube Shorts, I was like, people are watching those. And then just looking at like the latest stat, 45% of the population watching YouTube Shorts, which to me was like mind-boggling. And so far, so good in terms of, what's Matt seeing on his end. Definitely a scrollable platform, so less completed views, but I think the reach and being able to diversify, where this influencer content and vertical video content is going is a big win for our clients so far.
Totally.
Can I ask I'm sorry, Matt.
Sure. Go ahead, Amy. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just had a quick question on that, Erin. As in the first half of this year, if you, in the conversations you've had with clients around this, are you having discussions with them? Is interest growing given potential TikTok challenges? And what kind of pros and cons are you kind of reviewing with clients as Shorts grows?
Yes, I definitely think YouTube Shorts has come up in terms of contingency plans for when, who knows what can happen with certain platforms. But I do think that, that's not imminent. So it's something that's definitely been talked about though. And I think what's bodes well for YouTube Shorts is the fact that it so many people are already on YouTube, and the way they bake the shorts into like that organic content is very like intuitive. So people are finding themselves on there before they even like realize that they're on there, type of thing. So I think that just speaks to like 45% of the population are on YouTube Shorts. Like that's definitely coming from, you know, people watching YouTube regular on their mobile apps and then being able to quickly, you know, transfer over. So yes, it's definitely coming up a lot more. It's a lot easier now that you can do short specific campaigns. So I think this is just the beginning of what will be snowball momentum.
Yeah, and what we're seeing too, this last bullet point is that creating a vertical ad in the format of a short, even if that runs on a horizontal in-stream piece of content, it performs really well because we're also used to seeing the ads that go all the way across the horizontal screen of a video, that if suddenly you get this vertical ad in a horizontal screen, it actually grabs your attention. And so either way, we tell clients to create vertical ads. All right, so let's move through the last two shifts. And again, like I said, we could talk for hours on any of these 5 things. So we're here to answer questions beyond what we talk about. Cookie deprecation. So we've all heard about that Chrome is going to deprecate cookies, right? And most people know that other browsers have already done this, like Safari and Firefox, where they block all third-party cookies by default. Chrome has made a pledge to do this. Now, they initially were going to do it this year. They started with just 1% of users globally, and they had a goal to do it this year. And now they've pushed that out to next year. So we don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but I think everyone we deal with, whether they're an agency or a brand, they're asking like, what should we be doing to prepare for this? And there are a lot of things to do to prepare for this. The good news on YouTube is that it's going to have a less of an effect on YouTube advertising than it will on other forms of advertising. You know, Google is doing this. They really are doing this to give us all a more privacy-friendly browser experience, but it's also not going to hurt them as much as it's going to hurt others. So there's some sort of gain in it for Google. And how we talk through it is when you think about some of the primary ways that you target users on YouTube, it's either contextual, it's behavioral. Basically, the contextual targeting aspects are going to be pretty much unchanged by cookies going away, and only some of the behavioral ones will be affected by this. So what I tell folks is, yes, prepare for cookies going away, but YouTube is going to be even more of a place to go because there's great behavioral targeting that will still be there. My favorite is always search targeting. If you can target, you know, if you're Jeep and you can target ads to someone that just searched for Jeep on Google and put it on a TV screen where they just searched for Jeep on Google and now there's a Jeep ad on the TV screen or on any screen, that's not going away, and that's a really cool thing. And then responsible media, I think Erin and I talked about this. This is something that more and more brands want to know that their ad dollars are doing good. When you run a campaign on YouTube, it might run on over 1 million channels. You're basically paying that creator for their content. It's like you paid 100 different, you know, publishers or 1 million different publishers to advertise on their content. And so more and more brands are coming out and saying, we want to know that a portion of our spend is going towards publishers or creators that we care about. We in this survey that we did, DE&I came up as a hugely important way that they want to support diverse communities through advertising. We asked this about sustainability as well, and that also came up high, not quite as high as DE&I, but both are super, super important to brands and agencies. And the challenge on YouTube has been, there's no great way to say, I'm going to direct my ads to this set of creators who belong to this diverse community, whether it's a Black community, AAPI community, because the only way that folks could do it is to look at a community and based on perception say, this appears to be a list of Black creators or LGBTQIA plus creators. And so what we did and worked with Google and a bunch of partners on this is we started this initiative where we didn't believe it should be up to us or anyone else to say which community a creator belongs to. So we asked the creators themselves to self-identify. And what we've created is this initiative with a lot of partners where it's the only way to support diverse creators on YouTube that have self-identified as being part of different communities. And we launched this in October, and it's a really great way to reach diverse creators, support diverse creators, and reach diverse audiences. Google is very supportive of this. Like I said, this is their head of creators because they firmly believe that advertisers that want to, support diverse creators should be able to do it. Kellanova, super supportive of this. They always have goals towards reaching diverse audiences and supporting diverse publishers and creators. And then the other thing, and then I'd love your thoughts on this, Erin, but the other related thing that people want to support, as I said, is sustainability. We're getting an increase in this, especially in our European clients that are coming in and saying, we want to know how much of an impact, a carbon footprint our campaigns are making. And you can now do that on YouTube, which is very cool. We have a partnership with Sedera that helps us measure the carbon footprint of every single YouTube campaign. And the good news is YouTube in general has less of a footprint than traditional programmatic campaigns. So you're already starting from a point of having not as much of a negative impact on the earth. But there are also ways that you can measure it, but then you can also adjust your campaigns based on the length of the creative and so forth. So Erin, I know you said you've seen an increase from clients coming to you and saying, we obviously want to drive business results, but we'd also like to know that we're doing some good with our advertising, or at least not doing harm. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I think, this is something that just from being like in the news and in the industry, I feel like gets clouded by some of the more tactical updates going on, like cookie lists and things. But it's going to be even more important, like the closer we get to 2030 and whatnot. And I think that there's ways to incorporate this proactively. So this is something that as agencies, we should be bringing to our clients before necessarily they come to us. Because when you look at a company and you look at their expenses, and when you look at a marketing plan expenses, media and advertising is going to be such a large piece of that pie, and you can actually move the needle in looking at some of the ways you can be more sustainable. So it's nice that we're getting more options as this becomes, there's more demand for this, and I think it's a good one to get ahead of with your clients if you can.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll leave you with 5 takeaways, and then we'll answer some questions. Thanks for bearing with us as we got through the five things. And so again, we talked about brand safety and suitability. I guess our takeaway would be, have a good sense of the percentage of your impressions that aren't suitable in your eyes. Suitability is very personal to the brand. So certain things might be suitable to you that are unsuitable to others, and vice versa, but have a sense of that. We're happy to help you with that, but there are ways you can kind of measure that yourself. And you want to eliminate waste, but you don't want to sacrifice performance. So don't say, just to be safe, I'm going to run on just a small number of impressions. You're able to have both scale and suitability. And then in terms of performance tools, we talked about video action campaigns, and Erin talked a little bit about PMax. These are great tools that YouTube has come out with and Google has come out with, but you always have to think about the balance there too. Like sometimes if you over rotate and run on VAC campaigns, you might not want to be on certain GVP content. If you're fine with that, they're great tools. Shorts, we just talked about a lot. I always tell people, whether you're going to run ads targeted to shorts or not, you should be creating vertical content. We see brands just taking horizontal content, and it's not that hard for certain content to make it vertical and make it shorter. Those ads are working really well, as I said, on horizontal spots. Cookie deprecation, not happening right away, but when it does happen, the good news for people that are advertising on YouTube, it won't have a huge change. And then we just finished with the responsible media. So it's an election year. I think this is when brands, how they support or don't support certain causes is really under the microscope. So what we always say is, if you really do care about something, you should do it, but don't go halfway, because you'll be called out especially in election year, of saying you support one thing or the other. So we will leave it with that and open it up to questions.
Thank you, Matt and Erin. This was terrific. if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A. I have some to start us off, but we'll be watching for any other questions that come from folks on the line. So given the not imminent but happening cookieless future, have either of you noticed an uptick in advertisers leaning into contextual for that you anticipate happening through the remainder of this year?
Yes, for sure. Erin, do you want to start with that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But I will also say, as an agency, we're pretty much proactively providing these recommendations. Contextual will play a role. It's getting better. I think it will just get better with AI as well. But in terms of how we're thinking about it, it's diversifying your targeting and testing against other targeting lines. It should not be, the replacement. And one thing that I just wanted to speak about on cookies, if I may, for YouTube is obviously YouTube is set up very well, being hooked up to Google's search bar. But also, platforms like Meta, a lot of that cookie data that they got isn't, necessarily that first party data that you think of when you think of the walled gardens. So, a lot of Meta's targeting capabilities really came from, the Facebook share button that's on all the websites. Like, that's a third-party cookie, and that's going to go away. So, people aren't necessarily updating their Facebook profiles as much as they used to, especially in certain age demographics that are going to that platform less and less. Whereas Google and YouTube is getting that in-market search demand that's not cookie-based. So I do think it's important. Don't think of all the walled gardens the same in terms of how cookie depreciation is going to impact them, because the data they're collecting is really different when you look at the different platforms. So long-winded answer about cookies, but yes, I would say contextual is coming up, but not necessarily the replacement.
Excellent.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. I'll leave it there.
Can you guys speak to how videos that are made for kids are classified on YouTube?
Oh yeah, that probably we had a little clip on that earlier. So so the interesting thing about the way this happens, the question was how the made for kids videos are classified on YouTube. So it's basically up to the creator themselves to classify their video as made for kids or not. And there's a checkbox similar to the checkbox we saw for GVP. And if you're a creator, frankly, you're going to make more ad revenue if you don't check the box that it's made for kids. So what we've found is a lot of times creators who are making kids content are not checking that box. And where that gets problematic is for some advertisers that either want made for kids content or don't want made for kids content. And so we have an algorithm to find made for kids content that hasn't been self-selected by the creator themselves. But basically what you should know is you're going to see some things you may you can target or avoid made for kids content your own in YouTube when you're advertising, but just know that sometimes that isn't always going to work because the creators haven't always tagged it properly.
And I do think that's like another thing that agencies are dealing with in terms of the bandwidth to actually do all of this so properly is more than a one-person job. And there's a lot that you can do in platform in YouTube that's like reactive, but working with tools that Pixability had that are proactive and actually gives the attention to the quality and everything, that's really the sweet spot, I think. And I think to do YouTube well, you do have to do more than just going into the platform.
Absolutely.
When you were covering the inclusive media initiative, we get a lot of questions from our members on a variety of DE&I goals and challenges. In terms of DE&I on YouTube, do you feel it is more about the audience targeting or the diverse creators?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what's challenging on YouTube? It's challenging to target diverse audiences in your YouTube campaigns because there's not a checkbox. In the same way that you can on YouTube target age groups and certain genders, you can't do that for diverse audiences for the right reasons. Google doesn't want it to be that kind of PII information is not targetable. You know, they don't want people to avoid audiences in that same way. So it's challenging to reach certain diverse communities. You can do it for certain diverse communities by language, but for a lot of diverse communities that doesn't work. So it's challenging. We get a lot of advertisers that want to target diverse audiences. We also get a lot that want to know that they're, as I mentioned before, that their advertising is going to diverse creators. And so that's one way that they also look to reach diverse audiences. You can target diverse ads to diverse creators who also create content for certain diverse audiences. That's one of the many ways to do it. But to answer the question, Amy, we're seeing brands that really want both. They want to reach diverse audiences, but they also want to know that their dollars are going to diverse owned companies or creators.
Okay.
I wanted to
Go ahead, Ashley.
chime in that there is a question on here for Erin that I thought would be good. For some clients, it seems like they may not be as willing to invest as much in social content creation. Erin, do you have any tips as to how you sell the value to clients?
Yes, absolutely. So we've done many tests. Sorry, the question was specific to social creation content, right? Yeah, and that's the thing, like tailoring your creative to each channel is like so ideal in theory, but doesn't always, clients can't always necessarily, stomach the cost and whatnot. But what's good about social content is it can be done lo-fi. And actually we've done many tests and that works well on certain channels to be more, less high production and more lo-fi content. So one way to do it, and something that we've done in-house, is if you have a client that has done that, we've done an A/B test. So we'll run on social, we'll do the branded asset, and we'll do the influencer or social specific created content. And every time we run this test, the social specific content has performed better. And I think taking those learnings and not just giving it back to that client, but sharing those learnings across accounts, especially, as an agency, we have the ability to do that. It's a great way to sell it in. And then there's also just a lot of research out there. If you have access to research tools, sentiment around trust on certain platforms and trust in influencers, there are good stats around that you could probably pull to help support on the research side if you can't necessarily do a physical test.
Great, thanks, Erin. Another question, what do you recommend is the best way to run YouTube campaigns as a TV campaign instead of a typical digital campaign?
Yeah, so Erin brought this up at the beginning. If you're not thinking of YouTube as a TV platform, you should be. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to only think of it as a TV platform, but we work with a lot of advertisers who they either segment their campaign in a way that they know this part of the campaign is going to TV screens, and they come up with creative that's specific to TV screens and goals related to TV screens. Your goals might be less around clicks because you don't get as many clicks on TV screens, and more around brand lift and reach and so forth. That's one thing that we've seen brands like Kind do, where they're really good at creating TV specific campaigns on YouTube with TV specific goals. And they can also run those with other CTV platforms, which is very cool. Then you can have one campaign that has a mix, right? You can have different devices where there's mobile, TV, tablet, desktop, and you can kind of just look at the results and analyze the results by the different devices and optimize towards the devices that are working best. Obviously, shorts content is going to be more visible and more effective on mobile devices. They are visible on TV screens, but most of the shorts ads that end up running on mobile content. So there's lots of things to think about. There's no like formulaic right way to do it, but there are a lot of cool ways to run TV campaigns on YouTube. And I know, Erin, you've seen similar stuff.
Yeah. And I think for anybody on here that's currently running YouTube campaigns, what I'd recommend is take a look, like, where is your non-skippable inventory currently running? My guess is it's running on CTV devices. So take a look and see where you're already running. And then just one more thing to add to that, like back to tailoring creative to content, the story arc is going to be different for skippable content versus non-skippable content. So maybe think about, like, if you're using certain ads for your skippable YouTube content, could you pull in your TV commercial creative instead for some of that non-skippable, especially CTV specific creative?
And you guys are going to see some cool things coming out on TV advertising from YouTube. Like I said, this event last night, they were talking about some very cool QR code related things that will be able to be incorporating into your non-skips. So Erin's right. Non-skip ads are often on CTV, especially with some of the changes YouTube's made recently. So.
Great. Let's see. I think Ashley is mid answering a few questions live.
There's another one that might be good here, Matt, for you to answer. So, what should we do differently with our campaigns as the election heats up?
Well, one thing to do differently is to know that rates may or may not go up a little bit as political. There's going to be, what we see is that the biggest increase in political spend from last campaign to this campaign is going to be on Google platforms, including YouTube and on CTV. Whereas the Metas of the world will still have a lot of advertising, but they're not going to get the big increases that YouTube. So one thing you may see is some higher rates as we get closer to the election for your own non-political advertising. The other thing you should see, which we had a slide on, was more misinformation than usual on YouTube. So you have to, that's a brand suitability issue. You have to either avoid it, or if you're fine with misinformation, because it's driving performance, just that's your prerogative, but that's the other big thing. And then I think, that, like I said before, in a political year, it's sort of more important to either stand for something or not stand for something. So we talked to a lot of brands that are going to run campaigns that are sort of cause-based in a certain year. And it's a good year to do it if you're going to do it and really stand behind it. It's a bad year to do it if you're going to get caught being hypocritical about it. So.
Good answer. I think, obviously exclusions and just being careful about where your content's running and thinking about all the angles. One question here for you, Erin, I think would be good. If a marketer needs to decide how much budget to allocate to CTV versus social media, how do you help the marketer measure, understand, and compare metrics from the two to help with the decision?
Yeah, so obviously they're such different platforms. I think that some of the homework needs to be done on the front end. Obviously CTV is not necessarily clickable. In some cases it can be attributable, but not less clickable. So I would do some homework on the front end just to make sure you're understanding, like, what is the audience size on both of these? Where is your target audience spending more time? Base your investments around making sure you can penetrate that audience to move the needle. And then when you're comparing performance, there's a couple of things that you could do. I would say that looking at correlated metrics, more so business result metrics. If we all had the budget, media mix modeling, but I know that's not always the case. So I would say look at, percent reach and things like that of your target audience would be a good way to see if you're reaching your audience, and then any sort of correlated business results or site metrics and things like that could help. A great example is, we do looking at people that come to the site. So they might not necessarily have clicked on your CTV ad, but if you're seeing that uptick in site traffic, that's a good one as well. And I also just think it's really important to remember that, like, think about a click-through rate. If it's less than 2%, what are the 98% of other people seeing your ad? Like, they're not making a decision in the moment. How many ads do we all scroll past a day? But now the seed has been planted. And I think there needs to be more emphasis on delivery and changing behavior in the sense of getting in front of the target audience as opposed to immediate attribution.
I love that. And there are a lot of views you get, free views you get when you pay cost per view on YouTube that you're not getting charged for, that kind of you're getting partial views. That so there's a lot to think about that we don't get credit for as agencies and marketers.
We can also, there's one more question here that we might need a little bit more background on. From
Try to take that
Julianne.
one. Yeah, I think I can see that one. So it's could you comment on video recommendations outside of ads, particularly for YouTube Premium and other services that are ad free? Yes, there are a lot of, content now that is no longer advertising supported. Like consumers are picking up that slack. We actually have a decrease in ad supported content, which is just wild to think about. And in terms of getting in front of those audiences, obviously advertising isn't going to work on a specific platform that's not ad supported, except for unique cases. So less video, because if you're thinking video and TV, that's going to have to unfortunately be more like PR or influencer efforts. So like looking at the YouTube influencers and getting on their organic channel. But then like taking a step outside of video specifically, podcasts has been a great way to reach people that are opting out of ads because the podcasts have the ads built in and things like that. So there's workarounds, and I think finding them on other channels is the easiest, as well as looking at more so sponsoring organic content through influencer or PR.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin and Matt and Ashley. Thank you so much for this great session. And thank you to everyone who joined and for your great questions for our speakers today. We recorded this session, so we'll be sure to share that out in the coming days. And we will also pass along Matt and Erin's presentation. So you'll have that as well. If you guys have any questions, you can reach out to any of us at 4A's or to Matt and Erin and Ashley directly. Your contact info is at the top of the deck. And on behalf of the 4A's, thank you everyone for joining us. And we really appreciate your time and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks all.
Thanks,
Have a good day.
everybody.
Thanks,
You too.
everyone. Bye.